I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. There are many challenges ahead for the new school year. Primary of these is the significant drop in learning reflected in reading and math scores on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the nation's report card. While academic programs will play a large part in improving learning, some of the conditions leading to these poor student outcomes require measures that go beyond the classroom walls. What do students really need to succeed? Today, EdCast looks at the latest research on community schools and after-school programs in improving not only student learning, but also students' lives. Coming up now on EdCast. My guest today is Jane Quinn. She is a social worker and youth worker with over 5 decades of experience. From 2000 through 2018, she served as the Vice President for Community Schools at Children's Aid, where she directed the National Center for Community Schools. She was the principal author of the 1992 Carnegie study, A Matter of Time, Risk and Opportunity in the Non-School Hours, and the co-author of 3 books on community schools, including her latest, Community Schools Revolution, Building Partnerships, Transforming Lives, Advancing Democracy. Jane recently received a doctorate in urban education from the City University. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jane. It's a pleasure to have you. And welcome back to EdCast. We first spoke with you about community schools, I believe it was 8 years ago. And I know you have a new book about these schools, and you've just received your PhD from the CUNY Graduate Center in Urban Ed. So first of all, kudos on the accomplishment of getting the PhD. Can I ask, why did you decide to pursue this degree?
You know, I have always wanted to get my doctorate from the day I left the University of Chicago in 1969 when I got my master's degree in social work. I had it on my mind that sometime I would go back to school. I have a gift from a friend. When she went to China, she brought back a calligraphy that said, "Learning never stops." And I have that on the wall in my office, and I truly believe it. My career was kind of crazy. I've had national jobs almost my entire career, and I traveled a lot. And travel and getting a PhD do not sync with one another. So I was fortunate that my husband, who had retired 2 years ahead of me, gave me a piece of advice that I really took to heart. He said, "Do not retire until you know what you're going to do."
Good advice.
So I worked on that. I talked to all my friends about it. I talked to my husband about it. I prayed on it. And one day I was swimming. I'm a daily swimmer. And one day I was in the pool doing the side stroke, and I said to myself, "What have you always wanted to do that you haven't done?" And that came to me. It was so authentic. I could taste it. I jumped out of the pool. I ran home. I told my husband. He said, "That's great." So
can I ask, what was it like being back in school after all that time?
It was both weird and wonderful. I was in a cohort of 13 students who started at the same time and were in the urban education program with me. I was 25 years older than the next oldest person, and I was 50 years older than the youngest person in the cohort. So, you know, it was a strange experience, but it was a wonderful experience because people respected what I knew and I respected what they knew.
You know, I mentioned to you just before we started that CUNY really made a point of touting you as their oldest PhD grantee this year. I wondered, how did you feel about that? Did that mean anything particular to you when you got a lot of publicity about that?
Well, it was a big shock. I wasn't expecting it. I don't think it's so special what I did. And honestly, being back in school for me was fun. So I was shocked by the publicity. I have always been a person who has been kind of low-key about my accomplishments. Mm-hmm. I just never, you know, I'm not on social media. I don't tout what I've done. So somebody else touting it it's very funny to me that it's gone viral. I heard last week that over 5,000 people have seen the interview with me. It's like,
There you go.
wow.
Well, you are inspiring, and I think it is good for people to know that as we get older, we can still have tremendous accomplishments, and I think sometimes people forget that. So let's go to the dissertation.
Okay, great, sure.
What was the topic, and what did you want to find out?
So my topic, I decided, because my career really has been focused a lot on out-of-school time education. A lot of people don't even know that there is out-of-school time education. So let me just say we're talking about things like after-school programs and summer camps, not summer school, but summer camps. We're talking about enrichment. That is exposing young people to new ideas, providing hands-on learning opportunities, and thinking about ways to engage young people in their own learning and healthy development. That's what we're talking about in out-of-school time education. I think that educational research over the years has favored research in schools and really has not paid enough attention to out-of-school time education, even though we know that out-of-school time education plays an important part in young people's learning and healthy development.
So what did you find out when you did this research study?
So I said I was too old to do a dissertation that didn't make a difference in the real world.
Good advice for everybody doing a dissertation.
So I decided to focus on the largest federal policy in out-of-school time education, which is a policy and program that has existed since 1994, so almost 30 years, and it's called the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. It's a federal program and funding stream, and I chose that as my target because it is the largest single investment in out-of-school time education, and I had direct knowledge of that policy and program through my work at Children's Aid. So I knew both about some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses. I knew it from a practice perspective. I didn't know it from a research perspective, so it seemed like a perfect topic for me to choose. And I'll say I got a lot of support from the faculty. People kept saying, that's so interesting.
So what were some of the outcomes? What did you see here in terms of these programs?
You know, I went in, as you have to, I went into this, even though I knew a lot, I went into it with an open mind. I said, let's take a look at the government's own data on the outcomes, on the processes and the outcomes. And then let's supplement that with interviews with 15 thought leaders in the out-of-school time field. So I did both of those things. I did an initial analysis. I had a great opportunity to work with David Bloomfield from Brooklyn College, who ended up being on my dissertation committee, but I did an independent study with him where I looked at all the publicly available data on this program. And here's what I found out.
What did you find out?
That under No Child Left Behind, which was the big federal policy that started in 2002,
Right.
Under No Child Left Behind, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers became more school. So I found out that the two of the three most commonly offered programs in this supposedly enrichment environment were homework help and tutoring.
And what would you prefer to see?
I would prefer to see chess clubs, robotics, debate clubs, reading clubs. I'd prefer to see dance, theater. Theater programs are great, promoting literacy. Prefer to see cooking programs that teach math and science through enrichment, not through tutoring and homework help. The second thing that I found out, and this is perhaps the most disturbing, we know from prior research that dosage in these programs makes a difference. That is, how many days a year you participate and whether you participate from year to year. This is enrichment is providing constructive things for young people to do in the non-school hours and is expanding young people's horizons.
So were students taking advantage of these opportunities, whatever they were?
I was shocked to find out that the government's own data showed that nearly half of the, quote, regular participants in these programs participate fewer than 30 days a year. 30 days a year, I mean, let's just think about it, right? The
Right.
school year in most places is 180 days.
Right.
So 30 days a year is a sixth of that. It's not even once a week. It's not enough dosage to make a difference. Why are young people voting with their feet? Because young people say, look, we want to learn in the after school hours. We want to keep learning. We want to have fun. We want to be with our friends. We don't want more school.
Well, we're going to pick up a little bit about student attendance when we look at community schools in a few minutes, but
Right.
I can see these kind of go hand in hand. You're not in school for the day, and you're not going to be in school for after school either. But
Right.
I see this as, now,
Those things are related. It's
They're-
great that you're
I mean, I
raising
can
that.
see that. But let me just say, Len, let's talk about what you would like to see and how likely you think what you would like to see is going to happen. What are your recommendations, and what do you think about putting them into place?
I have 10 overall recommendations. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'm going to focus on a couple of them. Okay. The first one is that central to the legislation that guides this program is the word enrichment. It is in the congressionally mandated legislation, and yet it is never defined. I combed through the literature, the educational literature, to see if anybody out there had defined enrichment. And I found this guy at the University of Connecticut. His name is Joseph Renzulli, and he has 40 years of data on the benefits of enrichment in education. His stuff was a gold mine to me. He says that enrichment really starts with young people's interests. It's student interest driven. A lot of school is not student interest driven. He says the second thing is that it involves experiential education. It involves hands-on learning. He says the third thing is that there has to be some opportunity for young people to demonstrate what they've learned.
Right.
And he says the fourth thing, let me see if I can remember this, is that students are allowed to explore issues that don't have a right answer. We know that a lot of education has become rote learning. There is a right answer. This is in some ways very different from what goes on in classrooms. And we have a good research-based definition of it. So my number one recommendation is that the federal legislation, as it is either reauthorized or when the new guidance comes out, and the U.S. Department of Education is currently working on updating after 20 years the guidance on the 21st Century Program, that they really use the research from Dr. Renzulli on what constitutes enrichment. Otherwise, people are left to their own devices and they think remediation is enrichment, which it's not.
Okay. I want to ask you quickly, because we want to move on to community
Sure.
schools. I know that parents often like after-school programs for homework help.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's why you see so much of it. Is there still a place for homework help in the after-school environment?
Yes, there is. There is a place
Place
for
for
it,
that,
but it
but not
shouldn't
the
take
only
over.
place.
The issue here is balance.
Okay.
If you have a 3-hour program, you can do a lot in those 3 hours. You should not do 3 hours of tutoring and homework help.
Got it. Okay, so now we see that after-school programs really have the potential for boosting student achievement and giving them a richer environment if we would take advantage of some of those opportunities. Community schools are another avenue for helping decrease learning barriers and helping students. So you have been so involved in community schools, and as I said earlier, we spoke 8 years ago about community schools. So let's take a look at the changing landscape of community schools and what's been happening now. You do have a new book that I mentioned. We can take a look at that book.
Yeah.
It's called The Community Schools Revolution, Building Partnerships, Transforming Lives, and Advancing Democracy. What is the revolution about?
So let me just say I'm one of five
One of
authors
five
on this
authors,
book, so I
okay.
say that with great respect to my co-authors. I think the revolution, but actually that title came from a colleague in Cincinnati who has been involved in this work for 20 years, and she calls it a quiet revolution. And by that she means that a lot of people have been drawn to the community school strategy because they understand what's going on in public education, they understand the underlying research, and they recognize that many, many young people, especially young people growing up in poverty, need more support than they are getting. They need more health supports, mental health supports, out of school time supports. And I do want to make sure I say that the out of school time work that I've been involved in is part of the community schools work. These are not two different things. The community school strategy is broader than, but inclusive of out of school time.
It's all beyond those classroom walls. Let's take a look. We have a video.
Great.
Some footage. It came from a workshop, I believe, that was done called Sharing Power. And let's listen to some student voices regarding the impact of community schools on their own lives.
Never wrong to listen to student voices, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Putting us in a space where we can be safe and be safe and want to reach out is something. So instead of pushing us or picking it out because of our actions, giving us like that just tool to use is something very helpful.
I agree. And I also feel like during the pandemic, we all sort of like shifted into this really like depression, like Stacy said. And I feel like we sort of like grow together as a community because we all went through something like traumatic. And not only did we like go through that, but like I feel like ageism played a really big part in that because like Keisha said, you know, we've been going through different things that sometimes, you know, we don't even tell our parents and they might not understand because they think of our age. But I feel like going through this really like taught me that growth is real and that like, you know.
I feel like one is like a way of us bringing like our social like life and skills like up there because it's like we were stuck at home for so long that like we forgot how to socialize with people. So it's like a way. Oh, so like we are wellness all together, and it's like since we went through we went through so many things emotionally. It's like I don't know, we go like socializing and we talk, make new friends.
So like Emily said, we went through a lot of things, but like the school, they always support us and we push each other to be better. Like we always there for everybody, and we talk, so that makes us feel better.
We didn't really have a lot of support through the whole pandemic. So I feel like coming back to school, it was very beneficial for us to like encourage each other and build on each other.
Yeah, I agree because personally coming from a traditional school where it's more of tests and it's like bigger and not as many people actually care, like this community school has helped me a lot, not only realize my growth but also helped a lot of other people. So I feel like just the sense of trusting each other and community that the school has is very helpful.
Yeah, so I was also working at SYUP, some summer youth employment program. So I was working within the community. We partnered with Bronx River Alliance, and we used to go out there in the parks, cleaning up, learning about canoes, learning about our rivers and our parks. And that was very interesting because we were gaining agency as young people. Like we was learning more about our community, and we was also like fighting to make it better. And with that analysis, and now I know I can even teach other people what I learned there, and I learned a lot of things that is helpful for myself.
They speak very well to the support, the security, and even the enrichment experiences that you get in a community school. And as you mentioned, a community school is a school that provides a number of services that are outside of the classroom, usually in partnership with other agencies, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I want to ask you, I know that de Blasio former Mayor de Blasio had promised to launch 100 new community schools. How many do we have in the city right now?
Right now we have 421 community schools. This is the largest community school initiative in the country.
So if I wanted to create a community school, what are the foundational principles that we must have in place to have a high quality community school?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say that in 2017, a group called the Learning Policy Institute, working with the National Education Policy Center, looked at community schools across the country. They examined 143 evaluations of community schools. And in the process of that, they said that there are when they looked across the field, they saw 4 pillars of community schools. They saw that in addition to a strong core instructional program, these schools had authentic family and community engagement, which you've talked about, partnerships with communities, integrated student supports like health and mental health and social services, expanded learning opportunities like out of school time that we just talked about, and collaborative leadership. Those are the essential ingredients of a community school, and they will look a little bit different from place to place, but they are the foundational components.
So in the little time that we have left, have these schools lived up to their promise? What does the research say?
I think they have more than lived up to their promise,
Have
and
they?
I think we have good data. To me, the Learning Policy Institute studies that came out in 2017 are landmark studies, and they have made a huge difference in people's uptake that are contributing to the revolution.
So let's take a look at some of these promises. Graduation rates, have they improved?
So in lots of places, including in New York City, the RAND study of the Community Schools Initiative in New York City showed increased graduation rates in community schools compared to comparable New York City schools that were not community schools.
What about chronic absenteeism? which we
Reductions
alluded
in
to?
chronic absenteeism were what we mean children who are missing
Yeah.
10% or more of school, right?
What about student achievement?
Student achievement has been mixed, but pretty good. And student achievement, if we're only looking at standardized test scores, then we have to accept that that's a limited measure. But the RAND study showed many elements of student achievement and also showed gains in on-time, not only in on-time graduation, but in credit accumulation, which we know is a predictor of graduation. So I would say the data is mixed, but I think quite promising on academic achievement.
Last but not least, disciplinary incidents.
Down
So
in community schools.
So overall, really positive outcomes.
I think so, and that is, I think we have data from New York, and we also have data from across the country.
We're completely out of time. Just tell me yes or no. Are Mayor Adams and Chancellor Banks supportive of community schools?
Yes.
There we go. Jane Quinn, thank you so much for this truly enlightening conversation about community schools and after-school programs. I hope that all our viewers will kind of rethink what happens outside of the classroom walls and what we can do to really enrich our students' learning experiences. So thank you so much, Jane Quinn, and congratulations again on that PhD.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with our Ed Bites. Welcome back to this edition of Ed Bites. And I'm afraid the news is not good. To start, Inside Higher Ed reports that American confidence in higher education is at an all-time low. A recently conducted Gallup poll revealed that only 36% of Americans have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in higher education. This is a 20% drop from 8 years ago. Higher ed is not alone in losing public trust. The experts noted that these findings are consistent with the overall decline of public faith in institutions. If students are worried that climate change is making snow days less frequent, there is still hope for that surprise day off: ransomware attacks. eSchool News reports that these attacks are likely to cause more school shutdowns and bad weather, and most schools are not prepared to deal with them. In addition to affecting learning time, ransomware attacks often steal personal student data as well. So far, there are few solutions to this problem. A study published in the journal Environmental International indicates that children's brains can be affected by air pollution levels that are considered safe. The Hill reports that in analyzing brain scans of over 9,000 children, researchers found that exposure to fine particulate matter resulted in lower toddler IQ scores. Overall, researchers saw a significant association between air pollution and negative cognitive outcomes. As we indicated earlier, student scores in reading and math have declined dramatically. Chalkbeat reports on data released from the testing group NWEA that reveals there was little, if any, progress during this last school year in closing learning gaps. The results indicate that it will be difficult to make up pandemic learning losses. According to NWEA researcher Karen Lewis, whatever we're doing, it's not enough. That's it for this edition of EdCast. Wishing you all a great end of summer. We'll see you in September for the start of a busy school year. Thanks for watching.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your thoughts and comments to CUNYEdcast@gmail.com.